This was one of the biggest manhunts France had ever seen, yet nobody was even sure whom exactly they were chasing or if a crime had happened at all. In 2011, an entire family just vanished. Then bodies were found in the backyard, and one man was suddenly on the run. Was he a killer, a victim trying to escape his enemies, or perhaps a secret operative caught up in a conspiracy where even the bodies in the garden might not have been real? At the heart of this story is one man, Xavier Dupont, a member of a noble family that traced their roots to old French aristocracy with a lineage of poets, bishops, and members of high society. Xavier felt the weight of that legacy his whole life, trying to live up to a name whose reputation exceeded anything he could achieve. On paper, he was a family man who ran several companies. In reality, all his businesses were failures or fronts with shady hires and secretive purposes, each one pulling him deeper into debt. His wife, Agnes Dupont, couldn't have been more different from her husband. A devoted mother and Catholic school teacher, she seemed to represent everything stable in Xavier's chaotic world. But even she couldn't ignore the darkness creeping in, and in 2004 left a haunting message on an online forum, recalling how Xavier had once said that their family dying together wouldn't be such a bad thing. But looking at the Dupont children, you would never guess anything was wrong. Arthur, the eldest, balanced IT studies with restaurant shifts. Thomas lost himself in literature and classical music. The youngest son, Benoit, served as an altar boy, and their only daughter, Anne, threw herself into her science studies. On the surface, they were everything the old Dupont name represented: polite, pious, the picture of middle-class virtue. But with Xavier's businesses falling apart and that family name hanging over them all, the pressure was quietly building to a breaking point. By early spring of 2011, the house lease was abruptly terminated with no public explanation. Overnight, every bank account tied to the household was drained, and the children's private school received a final tuition payment. One by one, the threads were cut, like someone methodically tying off the loose ends of a long, dangerous job. Xavier placed a call to Agnes's employer and told them she was unwell. Just days later, a resignation letter arrived, allegedly written by Agnes herself. According to it, the family was moving to the United States for a sudden job opportunity. Inside the house, a vast majority of furniture vanished. At the same time, Xavier bought a bag of cement, a shovel, and a garden hoe. He also made a trip to a hardware store nearly 300 kilometers away, buying heavy-duty garbage bags and stick-on plastic paving slabs. On February 2nd, he had quietly obtained a firearms license. Between March 26th and April 1st, he visited a local shooting range 4 times, even bringing his sons along. Taken together, his actions started to look like a calculated plan. On Friday, April 1st, his eldest son, Arthur, disappears from both school and work. He didn't pick up his paycheck from the restaurant, something he had never skipped before. Xavier bought several bags of lime the next day, each from a different store in Nyon, ensuring no single shopkeeper noticed the volume. Lime is commonly used to cover the odor of decay. Keep that in mind for later. On Sunday, April 3rd, Agnes was officially seen for the last time, though later eyewitness accounts would dispute this. That evening, Xavier was observed loading large bags into his car. The family then went to the movies, and at 10:37 p.m., Xavier left a strangely casual voicemail for his sister. giving unnecessary details about the evening. It almost sounded like a man setting up an alibi. By Monday, April 4th, Anne and Benoit were absent from school. Their classmates heard the rumor the Duponts had supposedly moved to Australia, which was odd considering Xavier had told others the family was headed to the US. That night, Xavier and his son Thomas had dinner at an upscale restaurant. The atmosphere was strained, Thomas looked ill, and neither of them said much. Whatever was happening, it was no ordinary meal. Tuesday, April 5th, a bailiff came to collect on a €20,000 debt, money owed from Xavier's failing businesses and his desperate effort to live up to his noble family name. But no one answered the door. A neighbor and a local hairdresser both claimed to have seen Agnes around noon, but these accounts were disputed later. That afternoon, Thomas visited a friend in a nearby city. They played music, watched TV, and planned a sleepover. But then Xavier called. Agnes had supposedly had a cycling accident. Thomas left on a late train back to Nyon. He never showed up at school again. On Wednesday, April 6th, one of Arthur's friends decided to stop by the family house. She noticed a light on upstairs and knocked, yet there was no reply. Something felt wrong. The Dupont two Labradors usually went crazy when anyone approached the house, but now they were completely silent. The next day, Thursday 7th, Xavier was spotted outside the house, shuttling back and forth between the building and his car, loading it with large, heavy bags again. By Friday the 8th, he posted on a Catholic forum and sent a few suspiciously vague messages to his relatives. On April 11th, things took a strange turn. The school that Anne and Benoit attended received an official letter, signed by Xavier, saying the family was moving to Australia because of urgent work changes. But what came next would change everything. A letter showed up at the homes of Xavier's close relatives, in which he claimed he'd been working secretly for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. According to it, the entire family had entered the Federal Witness Protection Program and was now living in the United States under new identities. They wouldn't be able to contact anyone for years. To keep enemies off their trail, he told his relatives to spread a false story about moving to Australia. None of it made any sense. If it were true, telling people would completely defeat the point of witness protection. Looking back, it feels like a last-ditch effort to cover one lie with another. Meanwhile, Xavier was on the move, but not in the United States. Between April 11th and 13th, he traveled through southern France, staying in cheap hotels, paying with his credit card, and using a fake name, Laurent Xavier. He simply flipped his name and called it a day. On April 14th, a security camera caught him at a roadside hotel in southern France. That's the last time he was seen by anyone. The next morning, he checked out, left the car behind, and vanished. Back in Nyon, neighbors finally grew concerned. The shutters on the Dupont house had been closed for over a week. Agnes's car hadn't moved. Eventually, someone called the police. On April 19th, investigators officially opened the case. Growing concerns and a string of unsettling behavior led them back to the family home. 2 days later, on April 21st, they barged in. What they found was shocking. Beneath the patio in the backyard were the bodies of Agnes, her 4 children, and the 2 dogs. It was a cold, calculated killing. The autopsies revealed that they had been drugged and then shot in their sleep with a .22 caliber long rifle, the very same gun Xavier had inherited from his father just months before. Investigators believe Agnes and 3 of the children were killed on the night of April 3rd or 4th. Thomas, who had been called back to Nyon, was likely murdered the evening of April 5th. Even the forensic experts couldn't nail down the exact times of death. The same night, Xavier's car was found abandoned near a hotel 1,000 kilometers from Nyon, spotted by an automatic license plate reader. On April 28th, the funeral took place at the church where the family had once prayed together. About 1,400 people showed up. 2 days later, the bodies were laid to rest in Agnes's hometown. Arthur was 20, Thomas 18, Anne 16, and Benoit just 13 years old. Thus, the hunt for Xavier began. On April 29th, police scoured the mostly deserted Massif de Muret, convinced the suspect had never left southern France. By May 10th, Interpol had issued a blue notice for him. Then, on June 23rd, an anonymous tip sent caving experts to explore 40 caves along the French Riviera. Despite the intense manhunt in the weeks following the murders, Xavier managed to slip through the cracks. Months turned into years without a breakthrough. The police struggled to track him down, and the trail went cold more than once. The grisly story gripped the nation. Eventually, someone discovered Xavier had been active on a fundamentalist Catholic forum, asking about sacrifice before being banned for aggressive behavior. Yet he was never known to set foot inside the church. Maybe it was just meant to throw people off. Since 2011, investigators received over 800 tips, but almost all led nowhere. Xavier reached out to old acquaintances, including Claudia, a German woman from the 1980s. But a German police appeal was shut down over privacy concerns. He also set up a company in Florida linked to discreet financial services, sparking speculation he used these channels to disappear. In April and May 2013, large-scale searches, including in dangerous terrain and old lead mines, turned up nothing. The lead prosecutor began to suspect Xavier might have taken his own life, stricken by guilt. Multiple bodies and remains were discovered in the area over the following years, but DNA testing ruled out Xavier every time. In July 2015, a journalist received a mysterious photo showing two of the Dupont boys, along with a handwritten note, "I am still alive." The origin of the photo remains a mystery. The years went by with no progress. Then on January 9, 2018, police raided a monastery in southern France after worshippers became convinced the suspect was hiding there. But getting answers wasn't easy. The monks had taken a vow of silence, leaving police with nothing but awkward eye contact and very short interview transcripts. After 2.5 hours of searching, the officers faced yet another dead end. The man they'd been chasing was just a monk who bore a striking resemblance to the suspect. Then, in October 2019, a possible lead surfaced. Interpol flagged the man arriving in Glasgow from Paris, whose passport had been stolen years before. French authorities feared Xavier could be traveling under it. Scottish officers arrested the suspect upon arrival, took his fingerprints, and reportedly told their French counterparts, "This is your man." The French media seized on the story, and the country was gripped by renewed frenzy. But it didn't last. The CCTV footage from Paris didn't match Xavier's image. Scottish police refused to share fingerprint results, raising more doubts. Ultimately, DNA confirmed the man was a 69-year-old Portuguese-born French citizen visiting his wife. He had reported the passport stolen back in 2014, obtained a new one, and was traveling legally. The case was in ruins. police had raided a monastery, arrested an innocent man, and been engulfed by media hysteria. But this whole time there was an alternative version of events, one that flipped the official story on its head. Xavier's sister, Christine, claimed that her brother and the family hadn't been killed at all, but had fled France for the US to avoid some unspecified danger. She pointed to the autopsy report, which couldn't even narrow down a precise time of death, offering a broad estimate of 10 to 21 days. For a case of this magnitude, it was shockingly vague. DNA testing confirmed the victims were related to each other, but there was no verified sample from Agnes or any of the kids to prove it was actually them. Even more troubling, the recorded heights and weights didn't match the Duponts. If those numbers were right, the unthinkable became possible. The remains might not have been Xavier's family at all. What's more, multiple people swore they had seen Agnes alive days after she was supposedly killed. A neighbor said they had actually talked while walking their dogs, and he was so sure about it that he repeated his claims on a national television years later. Then there was the local shopkeeper, a longtime friend, who insisted Agnes had come by on the 7th, maybe even the 8th. But Christine went even further, releasing photos of the burial site. It was actually a narrow crawl space with a ceiling barely 1.2 meters high. So she asked how could one man with chronic back problems bury 5 bodies there without anyone noticing? Think about it. 5 tons of soil moved by hand in complete silence, leaving no trace whatsoever. No DNA, no blood, nothing. It seemed nearly impossible. Maybe the man really was working for the DEA, and the whole thing was an elaborate diversion to throw pursuers off his trail. Xavier himself has never been found. More than 900 reported sightings have surfaced, including casino footage from 2016, but none confirmed his presence. Some believe he escaped. Others think he's been dead for years. More than a decade later, Xavier remains missing. Without answers, everyone has their own version of what happened. In a case where even the bodies might not have been real, the truth remains as elusive as the man himself. What's your take? Was he a family killer or master of escape? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories that leave you questioning everything you thought you knew, make sure to subscribe. This has been Shady Sketches. See you at the next creepy case.